went to Zimbabwe to visit friends,
Okay.
you know, from when I previously served there. And, you know, having served in Zimbabwe before, of course, I have kind of you know, maybe a Harari-centric view of the relationship between Zambia and Zimbabwe. That Zimbabwe's always been kind of big brother, in a sense. And, you know, when you think of the, you know, the center of Southern Africa, the heart of Southern Africa, you tend to think that that's Zimbabwe, that this is a country that that really could be, you know, a great success and could be kind of leading the region. And yet the reality is that for 15 years they've had economic and political turmoil, and the country is actually not really doing all that well. And by contrast, Zambia has had 2 changes of power in that period of time, free and fair elections that resulted in changes of power, and it's had, you know, 10+ years of prosperity and economic growth. So in many respects, I think that that really the roles have reversed, and people just haven't cottoned onto it yet. That Zambia is kind of the big brother now, and that when Zimbabwe comes out of its current turmoil and turns to neighbors for help to sort of stabilize the country and get things moving in the right direction again, it stands to reason that they would turn to their brothers to the north, you know, to do that. And I think that speaks to something else, which is that Zambians should aspire to be great. This is a country that actually has so much going for it in terms of natural resources, human capital. You could be a really great country, and you know, I just think that the Zambian people, you know, should aspire to be great and should aspire to a leadership role in Africa that fits with what they've accomplished over the last 2 decades.
Zimbabwe seems to hold a very special, to have special memories in your heart, in your life.
Yeah, it was. Yes, we have a lot of affection for Zimbabwe. My wife, myself, my family. We have lots of friends there. It's a great country, but so is
I hope that affection.
So is Zambia.
Yeah, I was going there. I was like, I hope that affection also be the same affection that you would feel for Zambia even when you are out from this place. But however, let's push in 2 more calls. Then when we do come back, let's look at issues to do with elections next year.
Okay.
Good evening. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hello?
Good evening, sir. Your name and where you are calling us from? You are through the
Hello?
program. Go ahead. Your name?
Yes, but I cannot get you. I don't know the
We are
line.
able to get you. Just go ahead,
But
sir.
I can speak up?
You can. Yeah. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm calling from Lusaka.
Yes, sir.
My name's Richard.
Mm.
My question is, the way we've seen this country, Zambia, has gone down in terms of our capital, our money. People are complaining to say no because the dollar has been going up and our kwacha is low. Now, what is the way forward so that our kwacha can be stabilized, can it be matching with the dollar? Because I remember 20 years ago, the kwacha was having more strength than the dollar. But now, our kwacha is nothing. What can we do? What is the way forward? People are crying. Wherever you go, they are crying just because of the dollar.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let's push in one more call. I know there are so many calls that we can get, but due to time, I think one more call, we get the discussion. Good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hello?
Good evening, sir. Your name?
Hello. Good evening, Kalan.
Good evening to you too. Go ahead, sir. We are with you. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Mishek.
Yes, Mr. Mishek.
Yes, my name is Mishek. I'm calling you from Kanyama, and I've been in Your Excellence and Mr. Eric. I think to me, my question is just that, as you know that Zambia will be going for a general election next year in 2016. And now, what is the role of the USA to assist a poor country like Zambia? And currently, there are some issues which have been raised by the opposition political parties. One of them it is the issuance of the national registration cards and the voters card. Now, the scenario is that the areas which is the stronghold for the Patriotic Front, which is the political party in government, they started issuing the national registration card first. Then after that, they started issuing the voters card. But in the areas where they see that it is a stronghold for the opposition, what they are doing is they are starting with the voters card first. Then after some time, that's when the people who are issuing a national registration come. And the opposition have been complaining, and they have been trying to ask the government so that these issues are sorted out before we go for the elections. Now, my question is, as you are getting these problems and these concerns from the people, because to me, I see that elections are very much important, because in most places we see other countries fighting because of people not addressing the elections very well. So, sir, my question is, what is your help, or maybe what is your duty? What can you do to assist the opposition who are complaining, and their complaints are very much genuine? I think that's what I had. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mishek. Your Excellency, may I spare you from the first one? I think you've ably touched on this issue, and your issue has been diversification, fiscal discipline. This could help. So let me not ask you to touch on Mr. Richard. Mr. Richard, it's a very important and valid point that you brought that contribution, but for the sake of time, I think the ambassador has ably touched this issue. Let's go straight to elections next year. This brings us to Mr. Mishek's issue. But before you talk Mr. Mishek's issue, firstly, your expectations of the 2016 June elections. I believe the USA will also be going for the elections next year.
Well, what we will do in 2016 is similar to what we did earlier this year in the SNAP election. So we provided $1.8 million in assistance for the election. A portion of it went into a basket fund that helped the ECZ conduct the election. Another portion we spent on what we call a parallel vote tabulation, which is basically designed to provide kind of a control, if you will, to sort of measure whether what the announced result is within the bounds of probability, let's say. In fact, in January of this year, the PVT, the parallel vote tabulation, was quite accurate. I mean, it almost exactly mirrored the result of the election. So we'll do something similar. We also will provide observers. We have a pretty big embassy here. We have about 400 people in our embassy, and so we have people in every province of Zambia observing the election, walking around, visiting polling places. I should say driving around. They didn't really walk too much. Driving around, especially since it was the rainy season. Driving around, observing the vote counting, observing the voting, and by and large, we thought that the SNAP election was a credible outcome. That there was not excessive violence, there was not obvious fraud, but it was also an extremely close election, 1.7%, 27,000 votes. If I had to speculate, which I really shouldn't do, but I would not be surprised if in 2016 you also had a close election. I think it's if you had one just a few months ago and you have another election coming up in 12 months, it stands to reason that the election could be quite close again. And I think that in a close election, the involvement of outside observers becomes more important. I would say that from our point of view, we don't care who wins. We care how they win. And one of the things that the United States cares about is that the playing field be fair, that it not be tilted in one direction or the other, and we will speak out on issues like that to ensure that this be a free and fair election, and more to the point that it reflect the will of the Zambian people, that the outcome be what the Zambian people want. I would actually take issue with one thing that Mr. Mishik said, because I don't think Zambia is a poor country. Actually, I think that it's probably wrong to look at it that way. I think that it's really the problem with phrasing it that way is it's not our role as donors to take the lead in any of this. Our job is to be supportive and to help. Zambians need to take the lead in solving Zambia's problems, whether it be the currency depreciation, whether it be the election, whether it be HIV/AIDS for that matter. I mean, ultimately, $2 billion in American money, but a sustainable response to HIV/AIDS is kind of the responsibility of Zambians. So I think Zambia is not a poor country. Actually, Zambia is a country that can and should take responsibility for its future. And again, our job, we're there to help.
$1.8 million in a snap election. Do we see this amount still remaining the same or being doubled?
It'll be roughly the same.
Roughly the same.
Yeah, give or take.
Maybe rounding it off to $2 million, probably. Yeah, but Mr. Mishek's issue, quite all right. It's not your duty you don't care who wins, but at the same time,
we care how they win.
How they win.
And how they govern after.
Yeah, and how they govern. But there are already issues being raised by stakeholders to say, why are you registering voters first in your perceived strongholds? We hear reports that certain individuals are having 3 voters cards, 5 voters cards. We hear claims by the opposition that no, there's this mayor who's duplicating or who is issuing voters cards in his house. I'm sure to many that they would say that's a fraud in itself. So how do you come in, and how do you help to ensure that an election is free and fair?
So if you're sort of analyzing an election and looking at it as an outsider, the single biggest mistake that you can make is to just look at election day and just again send our observers around the day of the election. They look at the polls and they say everything is great. That's the wrong way to observe an election. The right way to observe an election is to take into account everything that happens in the run-up to the election.
Indeed.
So I think that the answer in that regard is that we're watching, and we're taking note of what's going on in the country.
So you're aware of these conflicts?
We're aware of those complaints.
I know you can't answer more than that.
But it's also early days, so there's always an element of fraud in elections. I mean, you can't completely eliminate it. I mean, there's one of my all-time favorite Winston Churchill quotes is that democracy is the worst form of government, except when compared to every other form of government. And I think that that's absolutely true. Democracy is kind of messy and sort of it doesn't always seem to be very efficient, and yet it always produces over time the best outcomes. So we I think we need to sort of let this process play out and see where we're at. We don't actually know when the election is going to be, do we? But I suspect that we have some time before the election will occur. And the important thing is that the registration process be transparent, be credible, be open, and be complete in advance of the election, and that in particular young people who were disenfranchised in the SNAP election be registered and be allowed to vote.
Your Excellency, the clock is equally ticking, and we're now under 8 minutes. let's look at corruption in Zambia. You say Zambia is not a poor country, and we can do better, you know. But probably some of these issues could be linked to corruption, you know, where people amass so much wealth in a very short time. How would you describe corruption levels in Zambia? Transparency and accountability.
Again, I think that all countries have a problem with corruption to some extent. I think that one of the problems that Zambia has in particular is something that I alluded to earlier, which is that the government's a little bit too involved in the economy, and so that creates kind of opportunities for bureaucrats to do what economists call rent seeking. So they create obstacles, and then then you basically, as a businessman or even a private citizen, to get around those obstacles, you have to pay something, and so that's a form of corruption that I think really stems from the government being too involved in the economy. Is Zambia substantially worse from a corruption point of view? Listen, I came from the former Soviet Union, and so I don't think the corruption in Zambia is quite on the same scale as Ukraine or Russia or some of those countries. So it's a problem. It's something that needs to be addressed, and I also think that you're a democracy. You have elections. You have an opportunity for people to to throw a government out because they don't think it's doing the right things. You did that just a few short years ago in 2011. The Zambian people decided that the government in power was not doing what it wanted, and they elected a new president and brought in a new political party. And the single best way to minimize corruption, in my opinion, is through accountability, through a political system that imposes accountability on your elected officials.
Are we seeing that happening, or are you seeing that happening in Zambia?
Well, you have an election coming up. I guess we'll see what happens in 2016. If I were a government official, I would want to make sure that I was doing what the Zambian people wanted me to do, if I wanted to get reelected.
Your Excellency, as we conclude with our program, future relations, how we want our relation to be over time, Zambia and the USA?
That's an easy question to answer, of course. I mean, I would want ever closer relations between our two countries. That's really the essence of my job, is to try to improve the relationship as best I can. I would like it to be better in every facet, commercially, culturally. We haven't touched on military relations, but
Exactly,
we have
that one was also on our table, the military cooperation. But if my director could give me an allowance of 5 minutes, I allow you to talk about that.
I can do it faster than 5
Yeah, or you
minutes.
can put that into your closing
Sure.
remarks.
Well, I can say that we have an extremely good military to military relationship right now, probably better than it has ever been. And really what it's based on is what I was talking about a bit earlier about Zambia aiming high. So Zambia has decided to play a role in African peacekeeping, and in point of fact, there's a need for peacekeepers in Africa, and it's a need that never seems to go away. And I think it's to Zambia's credit that the country has stepped up and is helping fill that need. You have a battalion of troops in the Central African Republic who are doing an outstanding job. You have another battalion that's training to replace them, to rotate. And the United States is actually providing the bulk of that training. We're not the only one. The French and the British are helping out as well, but we're providing the bulk of it. And I think that's helped the relationship, the military relationship, become ever closer. We had an exercise that we did together here in Zambia this summer called Southern Accord, in which Zambian and American troops were integrated at the platoon level. So, just like side by side, conducting live fire exercises and that sort of thing. So it's a very close relationship. and I'd like to make it even closer. So, you know, in talking about Zambian-American relations, really there's no facet of the relationship where we have serious problems. In quite the opposite, I would say, in every facet of the relationship, we have the potential to have ever better relations. And I think that, you know, the United States looks for countries in a given region that can be relied on to provide stability, to provide a way forward. And I tend to think that Zambia can be one of those countries in Africa.
Indeed. Your Excellency, your concluding remarks?
I think I just made them, but let me just then reiterate that.
I know those were your concluding remarks, but that was a topic which was on our table. But there could be something else burning which you want to bring out, apart from the military corporations and anything else. So something that we want to share.
Well, I'll just reiterate what I said earlier, that Zambia can be a great country. It's a great people. It can be a great country, and you know, frankly, I think that maybe the thing the country needs most at this moment is ambition. It needs to aim high. You have the potential to achieve great things, and you know, I would, as the representative of the United States here, I'd like to help that process along.
Thank you so much. Ambassador Eric Schultz, thank you so much for making an appearance on Prime Television. This is a great honor that we just had, you know, having you here. And hoping that your door will remain open, you know, so that we can cooperate in much scale.
It's been my pleasure, Kayla.
All right. When we invite you next time, we hope to see you back in this studio.
All right.
Indeed.
And you have some unused questions for that one, right?
All right. I think we've come to the end of the program. Thank you so much to you, all of you that have found time to take part via calling or watching. We're discussing the Zambia-US relations. And my guest on the program was His Excellency, the U.S. Ambassador to Zambia, Mr. Eric Schultz, of course, helping us to discuss a number of issues on this program. My name is Kalan, on behalf of the entire studio and technical crew, and of course, everybody else involved. It's good night and God bless.
What makes the new Chipsy Crinkles so unique? At Irio, we use the finest ingredients in order to create bold flavors. All our ingredients are carefully selected and prepared with the passion they deserve. The hotness of fresh red pepper melting with the sweetness of tomatoes and onions to create the most unique and exquisite flavors. 100% natural ingredients and no artificials. Feel the unique experience of our new crisp potato chips. The new Chipsy Crinkles. We know you'll love them.